to also assume that these stipulations, if application are granted, are brought forth to whatever enforcing board you have, and I believe it's probably code enforcement. I have to think that you're on the same page with that. I would like to hope you're on the same page with that. If that's the case, then I've seen serious issues around the village with that happening. And what you've just mentioned is that, you know, you can only make a judgment on what you know now. But the problem is the rest of us in the community are now left with that judgment and left with having to make all these phone calls to complain about these other impacts in our community. And this is a residential community, and it's a nice area. And I like to think it's getting nicer, and this could be a very big problem and very detrimental to that area. And I'm going to give you an example of that, if I may. The last tenant of the site in question at 4147 West was an automotive repair facility that we discussed. A very nice local family business. When seeking permission to operate at 140 West through their attorney, the applicant proposed several stipulations. None were contingent on business income, none were contingent on financial well-being, which makes me pose a question of the time frame that the building improvements will be done. Are these building improvements to be complete before they take occupation, or is this something that's going to be, we're going to move in, this is what we plan on doing? Because that's a problem. I'd like to continue. None were contingent on financial well-being. Decorative landscaping would be done, a new higher privacy fence would be installed. We're talking about now removing fencing. So now we have a distillery open to the public. I'm not sure, because we're not planning on doing anything to the rear of the building, potentially, and that's a pretty big space. But let's move on. We're back to stipulations by the automotive business. No parking on the street, and there would be no parking off property. They stated that there was more than adequate parking on the property behind the new privacy fence. There would be no working on cars on the street and off the property. There would be no working on large trucks. There were also noise restrictions and limited weekend operations. Inevitably, it took months for the fence to be completed. The section along West Avenue was never completed. Landscape was never completed as proposed. In my opinion, the largest negative impact on the community was the amount of parking on West Avenue and at one point Amity Street, and the large number of cars that were parked at the bowling alley with hoods up. Cars were parked on the sidewalk facing north and south, waiting to be evaluated.
I know you're trying to point out the fact that perhaps the enforcement wasn't
as good. That's what I'm leading to.
And that's your concern going forward with anything that's going to go there.
Yes.
Regardless of what it is, as of right use, whatever it may very well be.
Yes.
I understand that.
Okay.
That's an issue that needs to be dealt with.
Okay.
However, there's no need to rehash the old tenant there. We understand that.
Yes.
And I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying.
Then let me summarize, if I may.
So, you know, this board can only do what this board can do.
Understood.
Pass it on to enforcement. Okay, those stipulations, obviously, any stipulations we may make on any applicant are part of the public record, and it would be certainly up to anyone who wants to see that, certainly has a right to have a copy of that, and then to ask for enforcement when something goes awry. Because invariably, in most applications, something will go awry at one point or another as a business grows, and I understand everything you're saying.
Yeah.
So, you know, our job here is to try to have a crystal ball to see what could happen going forward and try to hem those things in as much as possible, and I think you point out some real excellent points. Unfortunately, once it leaves us, it becomes a matter of enforcement, and enforcement is something that I can't go down there personally and do, nor can we don't have the authority, nor does anyone else in this board. Yeah. But I don't disagree with what you're telling me.
You've made your point, and I understand and I agree. Thank you. So I'd like to summarize, if I may, with all respect, all due respect to everybody in the room.
No, please.
My concerns on Amity Street are driven by two things. One revolves around quality of life issues for my tenants. The other is the financial impact on my investment. And I really haven't touched on that.
No, but that goes without saying.
Yeah.
We're all homeowners. We all understand that.
Who'd like to live across the street? Who's going to purchase a home across the street from the distillery? I mean, the rosy picture that we see now may not be an issue. And I know we don't have a crystal ball. I understand. This could be devastating as far as my investment goes. I think that the neighborhood would like nothing more than to have a neighbor that actually cares about their property. The other side of that hope is concerned. Odor, drunken behavior, we now see it 5 days a week at the Blue Point, traffic, both residential and commercial traffic. I see that several days a week with 18-wheelers idling throughout the night. It's been addressed, but I'm going to continue. Waiting for brewery personnel to arrive so they can make their supply deliveries. Noise from music, people coming and going, events, and the potential transformation of what was a quiet block to another drinking destination. Businesses intruding on our residential communities make it very difficult for people to be good neighbors and simply live their lives quietly and peacefully. I will continue, even though you addressed, we feel that we are not getting support from our local officials who should be enforcing quality of life issues with as much emphasis as there has been on building the business district.